for joining me for the Plant Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Howie Jacobson. Today I'm talking with a former nun who spent 13 years working around the globe in the order that was founded by Mother Teresa, and she burned out. She was drained, she had nothing to give herself, and so nothing to give the people in her care, and she returned to Holland, where she had to reinvent herself in a world that she was completely unprepared for. And in our conversation, we talk about burnout, we talk about self-care, and about the work that she does now, which is helping people get back into the workplace after an accident or an injury or a disease. And also helping individuals and groups and organizations find the soul in what they do, find the heart and the meaning. So they're not just piling up achievements and accomplishments, but actually doing useful, good things in the world. So I think there's a lot here for everyone, and I don't want to give too much away, so let's get right into it. Without further ado, Saskia Kremer, welcome to the Plant Yourself podcast.
Thank you so much, Howie, for having me. It's absolutely my pleasure.
Yeah, I was wondering, because I don't think I've heard you speak, and so I was really wondering what your accent would be, given what I've read about your biography, about sort of where you were born and where you've moved and lived and all the languages. So is that sort of a bit of a Dutch accent I'm hearing?
Yes, I'm Dutch. I'm a Dutch Kiwi, to be more precise. I am born in New Zealand and traveled the world. So my accent may be a little bit Dutch. There should be some American, and now my kids are correcting me to get the Cork accent.
Oh, well, they're all good. I don't hear any New Zealand in there though.
No, I guess I was a little bit too. I was still learning how to speak, so that has gone a bit on the background.
Gotcha. So I was so interested in your story when I started reading about it, in terms of the work you're doing now and the journey and the path it took you to get there. So maybe let's start with just what you do now, just to give people a frame of reference for the rest of the conversation.
Yeah, so what I do now is I am helping leaders to create actually the growth mindset within their teams or for themselves, and to see how can they improve their leadership and implement a greater emotional intelligence within their team and for themselves as well. So how do you put the human person at the center of your business, of your team? So that is my challenge at the moment, to be able to to help those leaders with all that is coming and requested from them, to help them take on that next level within their team and for themselves. There's always a next leap, and without getting into the overwhelm, how can you expand and extend what you're really good at without getting overwhelmed?
So you know something about overwhelm.
Yes, I do.
I gather. So maybe this is a good place to segue into your story, which I guess the call to adventure began at the age of 12, right?
Yes, correct. So at the age of 12, my mom got the invitation to go on a road trip, as I call it, with Mother Teresa. She was doing a lot of charity work with the homeless, with the sisters, and Mother would come and visit. And so we had the privilege to go on a road trip with Mother. And I remember sitting in between the two front seats and looking and just being absorbed by her quality of presence and her focus in her presence. And that is what drew me and what fascinated me. How can you have this presence and focus, to the people that are surrounding you and in what you're doing. So there, my journey started actually to see, okay, what does it mean to be present and to basically to be fully there for the person who is in front of you, and really giving them the impression that they are the only one in the world, basically.
And what did you see as the result of that? Like, you could watch Mother Teresa be that way. What was the impact on her world, on the people around her that you saw that made you so impressed?
I think it was the quality of her presence and the unconditional, which seemed to be unconditional, no matter who was there, whether it was the poor in the slum or the poor dying on the side of the road, or whether it was the president. She always had equal presence and focus in what she was doing, whether she would be preparing a big synod or talk on a big synod, or prepare her day taking care of the poor. It didn't matter. Her intensity of presence and the way she dealt with the person was always the same. She would give everything.
And what was the impact of that on the people around her and on the work she was trying to do? Because you're now working with leaders. I presume you see Mother Teresa as kind of a role model of a certain type of leadership. So what did she get for all that? Like, I can imagine the poor on the slums being very happy to receive that kind of attention. But I don't know, what did it do to rich people, powerful people? Like, what was the effect on her world?
I think the biggest one was no matter the success you have or haven't, to be touched and to be taken seriously as a person. So to be valued for who you are, rather than to be valued for what you are doing or what you have achieved in your life. And I think that is one of the big lessons that I learned from her, to be able to look at the person's in itself, in their capacity, in their ability, but even beyond that, in who they are deep down, surpassing all the external elements of what we may qualify as success or not.
And I imagine in your work in organizations, there's a lot of people who are very achievement oriented, who may have lost touch with that deeper sense of themselves, because it's so alluring to define ourselves in terms of, accomplishment, in terms of what the external world values.
Yeah. And I think there we are looking, we're defining ourselves by what we have accomplished or what we have done, or by our failures or what we have not accomplished, rather than looking at the specific quality of being that we are, and the people that surround us are. So in that sense, each person has something unique to contribute, to offer, simply by their presence.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Which gives a completely different approach on looking at how can we look into leadership, and how can we look into building a team that is rather person oriented rather than result driven.
So, and yet results are important too,
yes.
Right? Like when I look at Mother Teresa's legacy, she didn't just live in a hut and be nice to people. Like, she
exactly
moved the world.
Yeah. And I think there is her power, or there was her power. Well, it still continues to be honest. So it's even a legacy reaching beyond her presence. And one of the things she would always tell us is don't count the numbers. She was the result of what she established, or what came about, was a result which was beyond her, I would say, because she always said, don't count the numbers. The quality you are bringing to the table, or to a person in the personal life today is all that will lead to something bigger, as we see now in her whole in the whole legacy she has left. But it was never her intention to create such a big movement. It was always, I am being attentive to this person now, and from there on, the ripple effect, the result was beyond what she had intended.
I mean, that's so interesting, because there's so much pressure in the business world and in the not-for-profit world to scale, and to start, even when you're starting out, come up with a model that can scale. And it seems like very good advice. And I have friends who are, entrepreneurs, and they're talking about, like, make sure you don't end up getting bogged down in something that you're constantly lifting. But it seems like there's a bit of a contradiction there in terms of the long-term mission and sort of like walking the tightrope between the two buildings, and then watching where your foot goes right now.
Yeah, and I think I think it's a healthy tension, because it allows us to be to move from one to the other, and I think as long as we don't forget the sight on the human, on the person as such. And we are able to navigate and to see, okay, but if we want to build something sustainable, who as a person are we invited to become in order to reach that target or that goal, rather than being focused on reaching that goal as the end itself. So there you get the aspect of, okay, where is the growth you're looking into the journey, and the growth mindset and the growth journey towards reaching a goal where everyone is becoming better in the end, with a way greater asset, and a greater legacy, rather than just looking at reaching the target or reaching the goal. And I think there you can, then the goal you have reached is a means to the personal growth and the growth of the business. And from there on, you can keep growing and say, okay, well, I have reached this point or this target. What is next? Where am I going to continue to grow? Otherwise, you get to a point where you're like, everything is goal oriented, and once you are reaching that goal, you're looking around and say, okay, well, was this it? Is this it? I have reached my goal. I thought everything was there, but what next? So then it may be the dissatisfaction of reaching the goal, because the goal is just a means to get where we, it's good. But it's a means to grow, and the journey is what is satisfying, not the fact of reaching the goal per se.
Right. Yeah, it reminds me of races I've run where the whole race is miserable except for the last 100 meters, but if I just ran the last 100 meters, it wouldn't mean anything. It was all the suffering, the 25 and a half miles of suffering before that, that gave meaning to the goal.
Yeah, and if you don't take the journey towards it, if you don't imply it within reaching the goal, then the goal is just a goal. It's quite empty. It's a figure, or it's something. But the whole accomplishment comes from when you allow yourself to grow and to, at that point of reaching the goal, see, okay, well, how far have you come? What are you able to do now that you weren't before? And there, I think there is a completely different way of goal setting, and also of reaching the next level, or setting that growth for a company.
So I want to go back to your story, and I'm finding, like, at age 12, you met Mother Teresa, and then you decided to sort of follow in her footsteps to some extent,
yes,
right?
Yes, correct.
So what was that about?
At the age of, so at 12, I met her in Holland, and at the age of 16, I went to Calcutta, and I spent some time in the House of the Dying and the orphanages, and there again, I was touched by the level of connection that was possible beyond race, beyond language. I didn't speak the language, and yet there was such an intense connection with the people I was taking care of. They set me down next to a woman who was dying, which made a huge impact on me in seeing. I was only 16, and they set me there, and I was like, okay, there's nothing I could do than just take her hand and sit next to her and be there. And that made a profound impact on me, and which led me to write a letter to her, asking her if I could join her. And she said very wisely, she said, you wait until you're 18, you finish your school first, and then you can come and see if this is something you would like to pursue or would like to join. And so that is what I did. I finished my school, and at the age of 18, I left to Croatia. That was during the former Yugoslavia war, and started there my missionary life.
What did your folks think?
Well, I think they saw it coming, and they realized that, my desire to do so was, it had been growing since the age of 12. So I think they realized that, there was no point in stopping me or anything. So they understood that was something that I had to explore and do. So they let me.
So were you like a normal teenager in other ways? Like, like friends and parties and movies and things? Like I'm trying to picture, like, what would it have had to be like for me to have this calling at the same time as just trying to be a kid?
Yeah, well, I think that because I had traveled so much. My father was working for Shell, so we had traveled a lot, and I always felt there was something that I was being part of the group, but yet there was something in my experience that didn't match the experience of the other friends around me who had been in their own environment for years and years and had never moved and everything. So for me, there was always coming and going between I belong and yet I don't belong. So I was always trying to find my own way. And when I came back from Calcutta, and I was sharing my experiences with my classmates and my teachers, there I had a real culture shock in coming back, and I felt that there was such a big gap between what I had experienced and where they were standing and what they were living, that it was just not matching. And so I always learned there to yet be part of the group and be, do what a normal teenager would do, and yet to feel that difference of the experiences I had made or had gone through, that there was something that just couldn't connect. So which at the same time set me free to really make my choices in the way I thought were in my own best interest.
Mm. Yeah, I'm imagining it must be, hard to come back from that kind of experience and then have your friends worried about, like, does he like me? And, is this a pimple?
Yeah. And also, I was talking to one of my music teachers, and she said, yeah, but if we would have the warmth and the sun all day, we would be happy as well, because I was really touched by the human dignity and the joy in the midst of all the poverty that I had seen there. And she simply said, it's if the sun would be shining every day here, we would have the same joy. And I was like, there was such a misconnect there that I was like, you really don't understand the poverty that I have seen there. And to make such a remark on it's dependent on whether we are having a nice weather or not, I felt it was so not connecting. And I was like, I just can't share this experience anywhere, because people just don't get it.
So,
and to see also the essence of what is really necessary in life.
So you went to Croatia, and
Yes.
you threw yourself into this work, I guess around the world for many years.
Yes, and so I traveled. I traveled to many places. I was in the States as well, in Illinois and in Texas on the Mexican border, and I did that for 13 years. Where I was my last mission was in the Philippines. And there I realized that I had given so much, and I had been traveling the world taking care of other people's needs. And yet I felt that I was hitting a wall, and I was like, okay, but where am I in this story? Where do I come from, and where am I going? And how do I, if I want to continue this life, where do I get my profound nourishment without giving myself completely away? Because I felt completely burned out, drained, and and I had given all, but I had nothing left for myself, which may seem maybe kind of contradictory when you're living in a convent and where there's a whole environment, and yet it was not something that was nourishing me enough to avoid the overwhelm of a burnout.
Yeah. So when you were, it was 13 years, that must have been sort of slowly building this realization. Were there moments where you were just like, what's wrong with me? Because Mother Teresa never complained. And like, did you hold her up as kind of an avatar of who you should be?
Well, of course, it was someone I was really looking up to, and she was my role model. And I saw the strength she was going through. And she had a very balanced life. And I think I never really took into consideration that there was a huge generational gap between her and me, and that she came from a communist background, and that she had that energy of building and rebuilding, but that was not my background, and I was just I was heading into something where my generosity was I would say ahead of me, and losing the connection with who am I and where am I going? so there was, yeah, it's true. Where was that connection with her? I saw she could do whatever and had her structure and life, and seemed to be, her energy seemed to be never ending. And I really hit the ground in saying, well, I can't do this anymore. I need to find a way to nourish myself in a way that I'm able to give. And if that stops, then I can't give what I haven't received. Yeah. So there seemed to be a disconnect for me.
Did her organization teach the sisters how to become like her? Like, it seems like, like I've met people with the kind of presence that you've described. I met a meditation teacher named Sylvia Borstein, who, I spoke to her for 3 seconds, and I was, just bathed in like cosmic love. And like she had been waiting her whole life to meet me and have these few words. And, from reading her work, like, this is a really hard lifetime practice of meditation, of contemplation, of inner work. And like, did you get the sense, like, here's Mother Teresa, this sort of strange human who's different from everybody else, or there's a path that you take to achieve that kind of inner mastery, and that you had the time and space to pursue it?
Yeah, well, I think when you look at the religious life, there's a lot, and there's where I say it seems contradictory to come out of religious life on a burnout. While there's such an environment where yes, there's prayer, there's spiritual nourishment, there's a community you can rely on. So from the outside, it may seem as if everything is in place to nourish and to get that connection, and to only for me there was some kind of disconnect where I was going through the motions, and but somewhere I didn't connect to something that was nourishing me from within. And when I look back, it's now 15 years almost that I left. The more I grow, and the more I am on my journey, the more I understand the wisdom of what was there. Before I was going through the motions, and now it's more something where I understand, oh, that is why this was in place, or we were doing this, or so. Maybe it's linked to age as well, or also to the different ways of being able to integrate the teaching. I mean, it's something that takes time to settle and to really make your own. We are talking now for me on a journey of almost 30 years, which is where there are still things that I understand better now that I'm growing myself, and that I'm getting older. So and there's where I say, the missionary life somewhere, it has never really left me, because it continues to do its work within me, and as I go, I understand more the wisdom. I understand also more its limits, but also the great side of it.
So I know for myself, like, one of the ways in which I've grown, kicking and screaming, has been to really focus on some of the things, my own suffering, my own shadow. And I'm wondering, in a universe where there's so much external suffering, and it's so clear that you are privileged and advantaged and lucky and fortunate compared to the people that you're tasked with serving. Was there a way in which it was easy to sort of ignore your own shadow in the service of others?
Yeah, I think that is very true. It's when I left at the age of 18, I was really focused on helping other people. And at the age of 18, you're not. You're barely discovering who you are yourself. So I sometimes jokingly say I lived my life a little bit upside down, in the sense of everything was first to helping others and to helping others discover themselves before I had even discovered, as you mentioned, my own shadows, my own pains, my own parts where I had to work on. The focus was on helping others, and that is, I think, something that caught up on me later on, and say, okay, wait a minute, it's very nice to be giving to others and to put yourself aside for the well-being of others. But you can't do that you can't do that on the long term unless you look at yourself and know very well who you are, where your shadows are, what your pitfalls are, and to work on that so that you can be giving also on the long term.
Mm-hmm. So you returned to, right after those 13 years, and talk about, sort of belonging and not belonging. You share a story about someone telling you that you have basically there's no job you're qualified for, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because then after 13 years, I was like, this life is, for me, it's not something that I can continue, and that, will allow me to grow in the way that I felt I needed to grow. And so I decided to leave the missions. But then there's a whole other aspect that comes, and where you take up, well, if you don't have a community as I had, you need to provide your own living and everything. So I was trying to get back into the working force and to workplace, and they just bluntly told me, well, with your background, I had studied philosophy and theology in the meantime, and they said, well, we don't know what to do with you. There's just no, because they couldn't put me somewhere in a box. There's no place we can find. There's no place for you in the working space. And at that point, I was like, okay, well, this is basically the story of my life. I don't fit in any box. So if they tell me now that there's no place for me in the working space, I need to create it myself, because I need to earn a living somehow. And so I was like, I don't want to all the experiences I had and the studies that I had done in the meantime, I didn't want that to go wasted. So I figured if there's no regular job for me, I need to create it myself. And that is where I started my own business, where I wanted to have the person really at the center, and where I started to work with people who had fallen ill and were looking to return to their into the working field with their disabilities or mental issues, to see, okay, what can we create there that is working for them? So how can we recraft their job to the full benefit of the company, but also taking into account their limits. So that is where I started to work myself. And as I had crafted my own job, I started to craft them for my clients.
And how did you get into that, working with the ill, trying to return to work?
Well, I don't take no for an answer very, very quickly. So I tried to figure. So first, I started to work in a family where there were issues, and I did my counseling training and coaching, and so from there on, slowly I moved into the coaching, and first as within a family where there were a lot of difficulties and mental issues. And then from there on, I tried to find ways to work together with bigger companies and HR to see, okay, what needed to be done, and the government programs as well, to allow people to get support when they need to return to the workforce.
So did you see these people who had been dealt a blow by life and were trying to return to the work? Did you see that as sort of a metaphor for your journey that you had?
Well, looking back, yes. And I was like, okay, I have been able to do that for myself, to craft my job and to find my way into putting all my knowledge and experiences at the service of people. And I want other people to experience as well that no matter what kind of situation you're in, there's always a way to get out of it, and to find a way where you as a person can contribute to something bigger, be it in your own family or be it in a team. There's always something that you as a person can contribute to the greater good of a company or a team. And to allow people to see, even if sometimes there may not seem to be a solution, with the right support and the right adjustments, you can do that. And I have been working with people who could only start working 1 hour a week. And we built very slowly, we built that. And it's also the quality of a company to allow someone to start off with 1 hour a week, and from there on to increase. And now this man, he is a manager in. He continued his studies, and he is now doing extremely well in a managing position in the car sales. So, which is really, I think that is my biggest joy, to be able to see that people, despite their disabilities or what we from the outside may qualify as difficult or not manageable, that is where, if we allow that vulnerability to be there, where we can bring people back in a space where they contribute to their best.
So I imagine there was a strength in you from having to sit and hold the hand of a dying person whose language you couldn't speak, that allowed you to sit with people's vulnerability.
Yeah, and to learn to speak the language of the heart. I have been in too many places where I didn't speak the language of the people, and yet where I knew there was such a profound connection and a communication from the heart beyond words. And I think that is what is allowing us to see from a whole different perspective into into connecting and beyond everything that is tangible.
So
and yet so real.
So I'm playing with a story in my head that I want to offer to you, which is, so when you came back to the workforce and you were told there's no place for you, that, like, if I had been sort of a hiring manager, I would have asked you, like, what did you do? And I'm sure you organized things and you ran things. And like, I'm sure there was a list of competencies that we could map into any number of jobs. But the story I'm telling myself is that they were really thinking that you were too good for them in some way, that your mission was so lofty that you wouldn't care about selling cars or making quarterly profits. And I'm wondering what you think of that. Does there seem to be some like accuracy in there?
Well, I think my story might have been so unusual that they simply didn't know where to start or what to do. And when I tried to find my way in, I said, I am willing to do anything. Even if they would give me I was willing to work myself up and start by I went on my bike to all people's homes, and I would do anything to get somewhere, but there was nothing that they would I think it was too out of the ordinary to be able to say, okay, well, you need to find a job in this department or that department or whatsoever. And they were just not interested or invested in trying to see, okay, what is there for you that you can, even if you don't have all the necessary requirements, but there is something that is beyond these requirements or beyond that certificate or whatever. And I think that was where I touched the difference between being able to really listen to the person and find a solution, or being there with your list and say, okay, do you tick all the boxes, or do you in which box do you belong? That there was the big thing where they didn't really know what to do with me. And that is what I wanted for my clients to discover, that no matter what, even if people, I wanted them to have someone next to them trying to figure out what would be the best for them beyond my own interest of a recruiter to fill a gap. I didn't want to fill any gaps. I wanted to help people in a substantial way to find their capacities and to live a fulfilling life also in the working field. And that is from there on that is what I want to help leaders discover, is that potential of the human being, no matter where they are. If we take the time as leaders and if we take the time to really sit next to the person and see, okay, to look with the eyes of the heart, what is there that you can contribute in your own unique way to the team, to make the team a team and not only people who are doing a job. What is there that you can contribute in that in the well-being of the company? And but that takes time. That takes courage. It takes also vulnerability to be able to sit down with someone, and in the first place, not knowing what is the solution to helping someone. So it also touches my vulnerability to sit in the fact that I don't know. I don't have the solution straight away. It is something that we will need to figure out together. And so I'm not coming as the one who has the solution. Often I don't even have a clue. And so it's the strength to be able to endure and to sit in that vulnerability of not knowing and showing up anyway. And they're trying to find a way that suits the person in a very deep way, rather than me imposing a solution, which may be a temporary solution, but is not going to do any good for the person on the long term.
Yeah. So is the spirit of business that you're proposing compatible with market capitalism? Because some part of me is saying that it's pretty subversive if you're putting the person first, if you're talking about the well-being of the team and the company, and you're talking about, I presume, also not just, okay, so we're a really loving company, but we build bombs, for example, right? Like it seems like there's something that could infect a company if you get in and they take you seriously, that could kind of really mess with some of their plans.
Oh, I'm sure, because everything depends on how you're building your company. Is your company, is it result driven or is it people driven? So if you are starting to implement the fact that you are looking at the person as your biggest asset, and implementing there that capacity to sit with misery, to sit with vulnerability, it slows you down maybe on the front end, but it will speed you up for the longer term, because as soon as you start to sit with the person in need, rather than imposing something impossible on the person, you will be able to bring them along way further than wanting them at all cost to achieve a certain goal.
All right, but for companies, in the United States, if you're a publicly traded company, you have a fiduciary responsibility to maximize profits. And there are, B corporation, but it seems like maximizing profits is the very definition of result-driven over people-driven. And I'm wondering how you navigate those spaces, because you have to make a living in the economy that exists.
Yeah, so for me, it is looking, I don't say that the result is not important. I mean, if we are in business, we are in sales, so we need to make money. A business grows. If a business doesn't grow, it collapses or it regresses. So it's very simple. We need to. That is part of life. Either we grow or we regress and we die. So we need to take that into account. But at what price do we take that into account? Is it profit at all cost? Or is it profit with the team? And maybe, as I said, maybe it will slow down the process when you start changing, when you start implementing that. But on the long term, it will allow you to create a team which is way more a team where people are really being valued, and so even in times of crisis or in difficulty, are way more willing to invest beyond time and effort and whatsoever. So for the longer term, I think you are creating a way healthier business culture than when you are looking at simply at results and reaching the targets, because people will burn out. Why is it that so many companies
Yeah.
And I think that is becoming even more accurate for generations after us.
Yeah, my credit card processing company for my business is called Gravity Payments. And I signed up with them after reading an article about the CEO who took like $1 million pay cut to make sure that all his employees made at least a living wage in Seattle. And,
wow.
And this was several years ago. And I know he's been tweeting like, there's no great resignation. Our company has more job applicants. We had a really hard time when the pandemic hit and everyone agreed to take a pay cut until we got back on our feet, and I was able to repay all of the lost wages, but they were loyal. And so if as long as the economy keeps going up, you can treat people badly and survive. But as soon as there is a glitch, then you kind of reap what you've sown in terms of human relationships.
Yeah, and if you build on those human relationships, you create also a loyalty within the team or within the company, where people in times of economic difficulty or even difficulty for the company are willing to say, okay, we are willing to really to stay put and to make it work, and we will do whatever we can. Because there is a right balance. People are not being treated as only the ones who can make money and who are reaching their targets at all cost. The other day I was talking to a vice president of a company, and he said, well, the profitability or the performance when people are working at home has increased. But he was seriously concerned and said, but at what cost? Because I see people are working way more efficiently and performance, but they're making way longer hours. But at what cost? Because I see my people who are just burning out. So we are not, I mean, we can perform at our best on willpower, but only for so long. If there is nothing that regenerates that energy from within while we are working, and which is relevant to who we are, and we don't recharge the batteries while we are going. And then we are only focused on reaching a certain target. And then we're wearing out.
So what wisdom do you have for folks who are leaders, either in organizations, either at the top, or leading people who report to them, or even leaders in the community or in their own families? Like it seems to me like there's a call for global leadership. Like it's time for humans to stop waiting for someone else to figure it out and save us. What do you want to say to all my listeners who are invited to leadership to make this world a better place right now?
I think the most important thing is that we are all called to be leaders, no matter where you are. Leadership, in the first place, starts with each of us and taking accountability for where we are standing ourselves, to take responsibility there where we are, whether it's in our family, whether it's in our own whether it's in our own business, whether we are CEOs or in higher positions, leadership on every level starts with ourselves. If we are not ready to take on the responsibilities and the accountability in our own lives, we will never grow as a leader. We will not be able to lead a team if we don't know how to lead ourselves. So if we want to improve our leadership, it starts with us first before we can lead others.
And what does that look like? So what are some practical things that we can do?
To see in the first place, where am I rather being reactive and waiting for situations to solve or situations to get better, or maybe in the current climate, in saying, okay, when we are going back to normal, then I will do this, and this, or it will allow me to do this. To take it back and to say, okay, I don't know when that will happen, but there is something that I can do today that will start to move things in a different direction. If I keep waiting for situations to become better or to improve, to make a change, it is never going to happen, because there will always be an excuse. But if I look at today, what can I do today to improve and to do what I can do today, then by the time we may be back to normal, we are way ahead towards where we could be. So don't put things off, and be proactive today, where I can make a change today.
That's beautiful. And that's in my work with leaders, that's kind of the defining difference between the leaders that the company really values and the ones who get the promotions, is that feeling of, no matter what's going on, it's my responsibility to deal with it.
Yeah. And it's never, as long as we keep putting the fault to, or the excuses to situations or other people, if he will be gone, then I will, or if this situation is solved, then I will. No, it's never good, because there will always be another reason why not to do. Mm-hmm. Make the change today, because there is where you're in power. There is where you can lead from a place of well-being and of responsibility.
Yeah, and I guess it's also the question of, what are my expectations? And that, coming back to Mother Teresa, I'm not sure that her intention was to end poverty, right, or to solve poverty.
No.
Right? I mean, can you say more about that?
She was always looking at what she could do today. And if today that meant to pick up the person dying in the street and to give him food, that was what she could do today. She was not going to solve the problem of poverty, but she could make a difference for the people she would meet on the day in the here and now. It was not some idealistic idea or she wanted to do. She wanted to make a difference in the direct environment and in the people, with the people that she met then and there, without postponing and say, okay, well, I need to go to the government to take care of this person in need here. No, she was able to say, okay, there's a person who needs my help right now. It will change his life if I take care of him right now, and if I give him something to eat right now. It doesn't serve him at all if I go to a constitution or a council or whatsoever trying to solve the problem at large or in a larger way. But she made sure she did what she could, what was within her reach, to make a difference today. And I think that is something that that sticks with me. Where can I make a difference today? All big theories are very nice, but what can I do today within my ability where I can make a difference in someone's life? Even if it's just looking at someone, recognizing, seeing them for who they are, even if that is just in a blink of an eye when I'm passing by.
Mm-hmm. And we have no idea the impact that will have on the rest of their life.
No, and I don't think that is important. And sometimes we will know, and most of the time we won't. So it's not for our personal, but it's with the intention to change something in someone's life and give them a spark of joy or a spark of hope. Maybe that will remain with them for the rest of their life. At least there was someone that day who saw me and who took care of me.
Mm-hmm. Great.
In whatever way, shape, or form.
Right. So we're at the end of the hour. If people want to find out more about you and follow your work, where can they do so?
They can follow me through on my website, saskia.ie, or otherwise follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn through Saskia Kremer, and Kremer with a K. Okay, and it's Kremer. And I'll include links to both of those in the show notes. Yeah. Great. Okay, wonderful. So Saskia Kremer, it was so lovely to hear your story and to get to know you a little bit and to uncover some of the heart and soul behind the person I've been reading about for quite a while now. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was absolutely my pleasure. And thank you for setting this up and to spread the word like this, because it's so important for people to discover the world and to see that there's more. Yep. And it's such a joy and an honor to be able to be a conduit for wisdom like yours to get out into the world. So thank you so much for everything you do and for taking the time today. All right, that's a wrap. If you'd like to see the links in the show notes, you can find them at plantyourself.com/502. Boy, we're coming up on episode 1000. Wonder what I'm going to do for that one. Anyway, movement news. I went for a 6-mile run this morning. Well, 6-mile run in that it was an average of 12 minutes and 12 seconds per mile. So there was a fair amount of walking. I kind of, jogged a quarter mile and walked for a little bit, trying to get my energy back up. I played Ultimate on Sunday rather. Saturday, the weather wasn't so good. And I've never been so gassed in all my life. After just a couple of points, I was bent over, disoriented. People were asking me if I'm all right. And, it's a pretty self-absorbed game, so we don't really notice that in others unless it's really apparent. And after an hour and a half of kind of really wondering what had happened to my fitness, I remembered that I had donated blood the day before, just about 22 hours earlier. And some of the people on the field are medical doctors who explained to me that there's something about blood carrying oxygen and not having enough that could explain my terrible performance that day. So that's to say, yesterday I took the day off, and this morning I got up and did this longish jog. Also got back into some kettlebell stuff. I did 6 rounds of pretty lightweight clean and press, which if you do kettlebells, you will know what that is. And if you don't, it doesn't really matter. And honestly, I've gained a little bit of weight, through the injury and then just being cold and wintry. And I think that's fine. I think going up a few pounds in the winter is probably a natural, normal human thing. But in 2 weeks, I am leading a workshop, the first sort of business thing I've done in years. And I only have one pair of travel pants that I really, really like. And they don't have a stretch waist. So I've committed to losing about
5 to 7 pounds between now and then, just so I can wear those pants and don't have to go buy new ones. So if you're looking for a big why, there's mine. So it reminds me a little bit about the beginning. The trigger of Josh LaJaunie's weight loss journey was wanting to be able to tuck in his shirt at graduation. So if you think we're on a different sort of spiritual level, we're not. Garden news: planted some blueberry bushes. There was a big sale down at Chatham Country Farm and Home down in Pittsburgh. They had what are called bare root plants, which means they're tiny. They have bare roots. They don't come in big root balls or pots or other containers, and it means you got to get them into the ground quick. So we had a thaw and put some blueberries in the ground. One of the best things about the house where we live is the blueberry bushes. And I was thinking, even if the house burned down, we could build a new, God forbid, we could build a new house in, 6 months. And, it's probably insured. Whatever, but if something happened to the blueberry, the blueberries, we moved in and we had blueberries. Every spring, summer, we get blueberries. And that's the best part of this whole property. And so it may take, 5 to 7 years for these little twigs that I put in the ground to start bearing. And who knows if we'll still be here. They might go for 10, 15, 20 years, and who knows what will happen in that time. But the thought of planting perennials that provide delicious food fills me with such joy. So every year I want to put, sort of 6 to 10 new bushes in the ground, and whoever ends up living here, we'll get the benefit of that. I think that's about all I want to talk about today, so let's go into thanks. All right, time for thanks. Thanks to Will Ridenauer for allowing me to use his beautiful song Sabali Dawn, The Dance of Peace. You can find more of Will's music at his website, willridenauer.com. And of course, thanks to all of you Plant Yourself podcast patrons: Kim Harrison, Lynn McClellan, Brittany Porter, Dominic Maurer, Barbara Whitney, Tammy Black, Amy Good, Amanda Hatherley, Mary Jane Wheeler, Ellen Kennelly, Melissa Cobb, Rachel Behrens, Tina Scharf, Tina Ahern, Jen Filikanovsky, David Bizek, The Mysterious Michelle X, Elsbeth Feldman, Leah Stoller, Alan Christensen, Colleen Peck, Michelle Landry, Josina, Sarah Durkis, Kelly Cameron, Janet Selby, Claire Adams, Tom Franzek, Jeanette Bennett, Gila Sert, David Donahue, Blair Cyber, Dorona Vizov, Gio and Carolyn Argentati, Jody Friesner, Misha Rosen, Michael Warbeck, Aviva Lael, Alicia Lemus, Val Linneman, Nick Harper, Bandana Charlie, Molly Levine, The Inscrutable Harry R., Susan Laverty, The Panda Vegan, Craig Kovic, Adam Scharf, Karen Burry, Heather Morgan, Nigel Davies, Marion Blum, Teresa Koppel, Julian Watkins, Breed O'Connell, Sharon Hirschman, Linda Ayad, Holm Hedegaard, Isa Tuzinwa, Connie Hainline, Aaron Greer, Alicia Davis, Heather O'Connor, Carolyn Jensen, Sherry Olakoski of Plant Powered for Health, Karen Smith, Scott Marani, Karen and Joe Crabtree, Kirby Burton, Teresa Carell, Kevin McCauley, Elizabeth Rothschild, Ann Jesse, Cheryl Dwyer, Jenny Hazelton, Peter W. Evans, Dennis Bird, Darby Kelly, Lori Fanny, Linnea Lundquist, Emily Iconelli, Levy Wallach, Rosamund McAtee, Dan Picorni, Stephen Leenan, Patty DiMartino, Mike and Donna Kartz, Deanne Bishop, Bilberry Elf, Marjorie Lewis, Tricia Adams, Nancy Sheldon, Lindsay Bayshore, Gunmarie Hagan, Tracy Gullidge, Laura Heaton, Meg from Mama Says, Stacey Stokes, Ben Savage, Michael Kay, David Hughes, Connie Rogers, Claire England, Sally Robertson, Paranganchi, Amy Daly, Brian Tourville, Mark Jeffrey Johnson, Josie Dempsey, Karen Schmidt, Pamela Hayden, Emily Perryman, Allison Corbett, Richard Stone, Lauren Vaught of Edible Musings, Aaron Hasty, Sean Owen, Sagar Naik, Erica Piedra, Danielle Roberts, Michael Lushton, Sarah Johnson, Catherine Floyd, for your generous support of the podcast. That's it for now. As always, be well, my friends.